This video is all about the Pale Uranian vampire races and other vampire star races. I'm going to talk about my personal experience recently with this, and I'm going to expand out a little bit into other vampire races, such as some of the Aldebaran races, some of the Pleiadian races. I'm going to expand out into that a little bit, but I'm not going to go super in depth because I will save that for another video where I go more into various different types of star races. Now, for those of you who have followed me over from my old channel to this channel, you are familiar with a lot of the star races I've already gone over. And it was always my intention to continue that and create sort of a documentation of various star races based on the akashic records that I've done on myself and clients, but also based on my own experience with these beings in other dimensions. But I digress. So I'm going to share a dream in which I ran into one of these beings. So sometimes they're called the tall whites. And I'm not saying that there are not other races that are called the tall whites as well. This might be a lumped in category that we have put various different types of races in that resemble each other, but they all do have pale skin and pale eyes. The experience that I had was I was in a dream and I was dream sharing with this woman who had 3 kids. And we were talking, and all of a sudden there was this trap door on the side that started banging. It was like somebody was banging on it from the other side. And then these 2 white-skinned beings just burst through. And one of them was a male. He was really tall. He must have been at least 7 feet tall. And the other one was a younger female. And she had some sort of cloak over her because I couldn't make out her appearance in the astral. And when they both stood up, she kind of backed off and he stood in front of her as though to protect her. And she didn't interact with anybody during the course of the dream. So it was just him. So how he looked in appearance was, and I've drawn a picture of him, displayed as the picture. Basically how he looked was he had kind of this shaggy, almost bob haircut, and his hair was white and his skin was white, meaning no pigment. I didn't see any pigment. His eyes, depending on the angle or the lighting in the room, seemed to look pale blue in some lights, and then almost like a pink in others. So very albino-like. And his eyes seemed slightly bloodshot as well. Now, his bone structure was interesting because he had a wide nose bridge, but it was long, but the nose itself wasn't that prominent. And his eyes kind of sunk in a little bit, and he had very distinctive, muscular structure and skeleton structure. He had really broad shoulders. He was not skinny, but it was the eyes. You could just tell that he was not human. Even though he might have been hominid or humanoid, he was not, human. He was not what we are. So similar, but not the same. And when he burst in like that, I just kind of looked at him like, what the fuck? And I slowly stood up because I saw that he wasn't making any intimidating movements toward me. But I kind of slowly walked up to him. I asked him, I said, "Where did you come from?" And he said, we've been hiding here. And then I said, "Yeah, but I know you're not from here. So where are you from?" And he started to say Uranus, but then something blacked out, blurped over what he was saying. And then we both looked up because it felt like it was coming from above us. It was really strange. It was like somebody was, making sure that certain things weren't said within that dream reality space. So then we looked back at each other and he said, "Yeah, as soon as we came here, we've been, hiding out." I said, "Yeah, well, humans can be assholes and dangerous creatures." I said, "But I personally don't mean you any harm." I remember I stuck my hand out like I was going to shake his hand, and I was still vetting him out. Something still felt off. I could just tell he wasn't familiar with any customs on Earth because he just kind of looked at me like he didn't know what to do when my hand was out. And then so I gently grabbed his hand kind of with both hands, like when you do that little shake with 2 hands on someone's hand. And then he mimicked my response. So I tried to give a warm smile. So he gave a warm smile, and he looked in my eyes and I looked in his eyes. Then all of a sudden he pulled me closer. So I said, well, but you don't have good intentions, is what I said. So I yelled over at the woman to warn her, but she was like playing with her kids, and there had been some sort of like sound barrier that had been placed between us. So I turned back around him to look at him, and as I was fighting him off, and he all of a sudden opened his mouth, and his mouth opened hella wide. And he had these really long, sharp teeth. It really reminded me of like one of the scenes from, It, from the remake. It was that kind of, the teeth were really long and really sharp. And his mouth was like expanding open. But instead of him like drinking blood, he bit onto my chest just above my boob, but he was like trying to feed off energetically. And so I got him in like a chokehold, and I started just beating the shit out of him. And it really surprised him. I think he was like expecting me to, scream or be scared or cry or whatever, or not be able to fight him off. But I started beating the shit out of him. I was like slamming his head into like the floor and stuff. And then, I teleported out of there, And I had a few people that I talked to about this experience out of school. What happened to the woman and the children? I don't know. I really wasn't thinking in those terms in that moment, So I hope that, they were okay. But the interesting thing that happened in all of this is that when I woke up after I woke up, that area was sore as though somebody had legit bit me. So there were no marks, but it was sore for like 3 or 4 days. So it definitely had an impact. And of course I did, some energy work on that area and scanned my energy bodies and, worked on healing that space and everything. But there was definitely like a reverberation that happened as a result of that experience. One thing I want to point out is that these Pale Uranians is what I've begun calling them. They typically dress like how people would think in Christianity, like how it was depicted after the iconoclasm with like all these white angels and flowing white robes. That's how they dress. Like they dress in flowing white robes, sometimes with like fur or like fringes on the edges of the sleeves. And they are super pale. There's no pigment. Like whatsoever. They definitely try to present themselves as being friendly. And there was no misunderstanding of, cultural difference or anything. His intention was always to try to lure me close so he could do that. Now, I'm not saying that every Uranian from this type of race, because there's other Uranian races, guys. I'm not saying that this is the only, that the only Uranian race is like a vampire race. And I want to say for the record that I do not subscribe. Those of you who follow my channel really closely, you know this. I don't subscribe to NASA's view of planets. So if you are interested in how I do subscribe to it, check out my video on the Cosmic Egg Holographic Universe, and I go into that a little bit. And I'm going to do more videos with that, guys, so stay tuned. Okay, back to what I was saying. So I see these as realms or planes. I don't see them as planets. And so when I say Uranus, I'm not saying, the Uranus that NASA talks about. I'm saying the plane or the realm or the dimension, okay? And that's why I don't call them extraterrestrials or ETs, I call them extra dimensionals or EDs. I digress. So this is not the only vampire race that exists, guys, but this is the one that I had an actual direct conflict with. Now, I have seen other vampire races in the Akashic records, and if you do come across these beings, the best thing you can do is keep your distance. And if you're in a dream state, and you know how to teleport out. Put as much distance between them as you can. And, if one does attack you and it's in the astral, wake yourself up. And then, you can do whatever healing and energy retrieval or whatever else you need to do. Now, if you were to see one of these beings more in the 3D level, yeah, definitely run. Don't try to fight them. They're really tall and really big. I mean, I could tell I was way more powerful than him in the astral, but I'm sure like if we were to go toe to toe in the 3D, he'd whip my ass as he's like 7 feet tall. So, you know, if you guys come across these guys and they have bad intentions toward you and they're trying to do this or that, run. You know what I mean? Don't stick around to find out. And don't stand around and go, oh, well, I wonder if this is a good or a bad being. Like, you know, you guys know I don't subscribe to that mentality anyway. You know, it's just like with people. You have, you know, nice people and assholes in every race on earth. You know what I mean? So I imagine it's the same multidimensionally, as above, so below, as within, so without. However, there are certain factions that have certain agendas dealing with our realm, and that has to be taken into consideration. So the reason I thought this was important to talk about is we have to be able to identify the factions that do not have human beings' best interest in mind. Some of them are here just to harvest us. Okay? So it's important to know these things. Now, these beings, these Uranians, seem more like they were refugees that, you know, kind of go from place to place, very parasitic in nature. You know, I don't think that Uranus is even their original home. I got that vibe. And I do feel like they just kind of move from place to place and try to, you know, blend in and try to, you know, feed or take what they can, you know, and I think they get kicked out a lot from different realms. That was the vibe I got. Don't know for sure. As far as the other races are concerned, you know, the Pleiadians and the Aldebarans, I'm going to go more in detail in that in another video because I haven't touched on the Aldebarans and the Pleiadians, and I feel like they do deserve their own video. But I definitely felt like these were intruder race type races, meaning I think that they have a tendency to kind of go to other people's worlds and, you know, create problems. I don't think that Uranus is their original home. I really don't. Now, they might have been there for a certain length of time, but that's just the vibe I got. And if you guys have ever had experiences with these beings, you know, as I described them, or you know of anyone who has, you know, feel free to drop it in the comment section below. I'd love to hear from your personal experience and your stories. I feel like when we all put together, you know, our individual experiences, we get a bigger idea, a clearer picture of what's going on in the multiverse. So I always think it's important to, you know, compare stories and look for the commonalities. That's why I consider myself somewhat of an omnist, because I really do believe that you can find, you know, gems of truth in everybody's narrative and everybody's experience. So I hope you guys enjoyed that video. Definitely stay tuned for more videos. I did a poll recently, and it seems like a lot of you guys are more interested in occultic knowledge and, you know, starseed videos. So I'm going to try to implement that more and sort of blend it in with the readings. I know I got a little pick a pile reading dominant, and that's because I just go with the flow. So when I'm on certain modes, I do it, but I'm starting to feel like I want to incorporate more of these types of videos, which is why I did that poll to see if that's something you guys would be interested in. So it was, so that's good. So stay tuned for future videos. Take care. Check out my website, thetantricdragoness.com, to book a private akashic reading or any other reading. Also, akashic portraits, consultations, shamanic journeys, starseed charts, primordial dragon fire healing, and much more. You can also subscribe to Patreon to learn how to do a lot of this yourself through various templates I've designed. Activate Diamond Consciousness, Activate the Black Flame, Journey the Underworld, Tantric Healing and BDSM, Astral Projection and Power, Shields, Cloaks, Wards, Learning Light Language, Exclusive and Premier Readings, Soul Fragment Retrieval, Advanced Ancestral Work, Creating Your Own Shamanic Sanctuary, and much more. Thanks for your support, and stay tuned for future videos.